Every successful organization begins with its people. At Incredible Workplaces, we help you build workplaces that inspire, engage, and endure. Recognition starts with certification. Our globally benchmarked evaluation celebrates organizations that foster engagement, inclusivity, and innovation. Certification is more than a badge. It's proof that your culture empowers people to excel. Through consulting, we partner with organizations to transform cultures, strengthen leadership, and build workplaces that adapt, innovate, and thrive. Your story deserves to be heard. With our employer branding solutions, we showcase your culture through featured videos, exclusive events, and media spotlights, ensuring you attract and retain top talent with pride. From recognition to transformation and employer branding, our services create workplaces that inspire people and elevate businesses. Are you ready to transform your workplace into a beacon of excellence? Partner with Incredible Workplaces today.
Thanks a lot, Incredible Workplace, for this recognition. Thank you.
Proud to be Incredible Workplace.
I'm proud to share that MB Informatics has been certified as an Incredible Workplace.
Feeling proud to be recognized as Incredible Workplace certified.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for all the audience that is watching our LinkedIn Live called Culture Connect from all over the world. Today, we are in the episode 16 that we are going to have. And in this particular episode, we bring leaders from all over the world. And today, I'm very excited to have Steve with us. He's the CEO of McKinney Consulting Inc. from Korea. And I'm sure you all must be very much aware about the country and a lot of music and the web series that we are a fan of. But now today we're going to have Steve with us from Korea and talking about the culture and how the culture is redefined through leadership action. First of all, Steve, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's incredible to be here.
I love it. That's a great start, by the way. So, we normally have different kind of leaders, Steve, on our conversation. We have people from HR, from L&D, people who are from business side. All the couple of CEOs definitely there, but there are CEOs from multiple like IT companies and all. I think it's a very unique to have a CEO who is from consulting background, especially from the talent side of it. And I love the conversation that we had before this particular live session, and definitely love to have those experiences also being spoken here. But Steve, before we start, I would like you to just share something about yourself to our audience so that they can connect well with you.
Okay, well, it's so great to be here today. Thanks everyone for attending, and hope you'll find it enjoyable and educational and hopefully fun. As he mentions, I live, and my business is based in Seoul, South Korea. But I was born and raised in the beautiful mountains, the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina in the United States. My wife is Korean. That's the short answer of why I'm here. But I've had a exciting career so far in my life that's gone from majoring in music to managing the largest factory in the world for Reebok, a 5,000 person factory, to being the head of footwear product development for the world for Adidas. And from there, then creating my own business, McKinney Consulting, which, as you mentioned, it is an executive search and a leadership consulting company. So we do executive coach. I'm also a keynote speaker on proactive agility, which we will talk about a little later. And we're excited to be here and to share the thoughts that we have. We do work with a lot of Fortune 500 clients, I should tell you that, and a lot of SMEs. So we work with a lot of HR leaders and head of operations folks for a lot of the companies that you're aware of, and hopefully many of them are incredible companies as well that are associated with you.
Awesome, Steve, and thank you very much for taking us to journey. And I'm really particularly very interested in talking about your experiences, the story coming from Adidas. But before we go there, I would like to call out to my audience that please feel free to ask your questions on the topic of defining culture through leadership action. And I will try my level best to take as many as questions we can take from audience, because I do have my own set of questions that I want to ask Steve. I'll start with that, but meanwhile, feel free to ask your questions. And as I said, I'll try to take them as much as possible. And hopefully, Steve will be here to throw his experience on all the questions that you have for us. Now, Steve, as you mentioned about the leadership part of it, like you're also hiring leadership for organization, and if I'm not wrong, you also do some sort of consulting and coaching assignment for them. It's very interesting for me, and when I ask this question and I get very different answers. So I would like to ask this question from you, Steve. Is that how do you personally define organization culture? And what do you think is the role of leadership in shaping the organization culture day to day? What do you think?
Okay, organizational culture to me, it's the collective personality of the workplace. It's like a living set of values, behaviors, and attitudes that shape how people interact, make decisions, and solve problems every day. Culture shows up in the way that colleagues support each other during high pressure situations, how feedback is given and received, and whether innovation is truly rewarded or it's just talked about. And leadership doesn't just set the tone, it actually drives the rhythm. Every day, leaders model what's possible through their decisions, their visibility, and the vulnerability that they have. So through consistent actions, like, for example, sharing wins, owning mistakes, prioritizing learning, leaders turn abstract values into what I like to call everyday moments, which is like shaping culture one choice at a time.
Awesome. So basically, as an organization also is into assessing organization's work culture, Steve. And if we find them matching to the standard that we have set, and by the way, we use a pulse framework for that. If the standard is matched to that particular index, we do certified organization as incredible workplaces. And because we do talk to a lot of leaders like you at this point in time, and many of them has always said that, of course, the role of the leadership is the most important role when you are talking about defining the culture of the organization. But at the same time, it is also, they felt that other team members in the organization plays equal role, because the culture, as you correctly said, becomes when everybody coming together is the whole whole thing, is not only one particular leader thinking in a particular way. So really awesome. And thank you for all the audience also who has welcomed Steve in a very different way. There are many people who are saying hola to you. I don't know if hola means something in Korean or it's just Spanish. But never mind. I definitely think hola is a Spanish word where it means hello, welcome. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for welcoming Steve on this particular platform. Steve, any example that you would like to give where you think that the leadership action or any particular decision has significantly influenced your company culture positively or negatively? And you can, take example of your current organization or maybe the previous one. Do you have any such example that you want to share with us?
Yes, actually, if it's okay, I would like to share two. I'd like to share one with my current company and then one at Adidas, which I think your audience may find interesting. Early on in McKinney Consulting, we faced a moment when a newly promoted manager struggled with client feedback. So rather than just shielding him or micromanaging the process, what we did was I coached him openly, discussing what went well and where he could grow right in front of the team. We discussed this very openly and honestly. Okay, so the moment signaled that growth and transparency mattered more than the blame. Even in Korea, for example, it's a blame culture. But I coach a lot of foreigners coming in here and tell them, please, it's a blame culture, so try not to blame them. Ask open-ended questions. Ask them what's their ideas, what's their thoughts about solving a problem before you ever give them your idea, especially if you're the leader. Because as soon as you start talking, they're going to quit speaking. So, but when we did this, we had a whole team-wide shift. Employees begin more willing to share their feedbacks, support one another in learning. So it taught me at that early stage that visible leadership actions, no matter how small, they can shape the team's willingness to experiment, admit mistakes, and ultimately innovate. And if I can go back a little bit further, earlier in my career, I thought about this just a few minutes when you and I were talking before about Adidas. And Americans call it Adidas, but it's named after Adi Dassler, the German gentleman, and the Puma brother, actually, the Puma leader and the Adidas brothers. And I've been to their place in Germany, actually. But Adidas, I was the head of R&D for the world for Adidas. And we had a peculiar challenge because I was hired to be one of the key leaders to come in and help take Adidas to a public offering. So I had to recreate many new processes and policies and processes and procedures. And at that time, the brand was hot, but we needed more sales. We needed more product. We needed more grow. It was kind of like, the chicken or the egg, which comes first? You need these sales, but you need the people and the product to get the sales. So how are you going to do this? So I come up with this idea. That's what I wanted to share with you is what I said, okay, listen, I had this guy there, true story. His name is Gary. He had also managed production like me in Asia. And so he was strong technically. And he was my strongest ones. And so I said, listen, we don't have enough money or budget to hire enough people. So what I need you to do is each of you have your category, whether it be basketball, cross training, running, whatever, that you're responsible for globally for the company, right? But I need you to also contribute to the team effort, all right? So I need you to do your job and do more. A second job of doing the team. So what I want you to do is this. Let's recognize who's the Superman and Superwoman of what areas, because all of you are special or I would not have hired you. I hired from all over the world to pull this team together. And I said, Gary was fantastic technically. All right. So I said, if you can't come to me, come to Gary. He's our superstar. He knows more than any of you. Admit it. He knows more than any of you. He's our man. All right. And Linda is awesome. Linda worked in New York at Promo Steel, big house for design, color analysis, and trends. She's off the top in fashion and color. Okay, she's our superwoman in trends and colors. So I want you to go to her. If you can't come to me, go to her. She knows much more about it than I do. So every single person, I begin to point out what they were so good at. All right, they all have similar commonalities in what they did, but they need to contribute to the team with their specialty. So we brought that out of everybody. What was they so unique about? And by doing this, we began to work together as a team. We began the process. It was fantastic. And people have open conversations. They trust. And you know what? They don't just think of themselves or their category. They think of other teams, all right, and the whole group. So I know that's a longer example, but it really works. It really works when you care and you love your people and you look for what's good in them. Everybody can improve. So don't just complain. Right? We all can complain. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But find what's good into it and pull it out and magnify it. Let everybody know that Linda is awesome. Gary is fantastic. Right? And then use that. This really builds the team. It really makes it an incredible place to work. I'm telling you.
Awesome, Steve. And I think when you're giving this example, one thing I could just sense is that the example of Adidas that you just gave, where you have a team that come from diverse culture, but they have diverse skill set, and you actually try to find a way where team is using the best of the skills that particular individual has. Maybe also culture is to bring the uniformity in the diversity, and how do you bring that uniformity in the diversity is another way of look at the work culture. But
Yes. Yes.
what you also said in the beginning is that you spoke a little bit about the people or leaders who are coming from other places to Korea, and you are giving them advice on the culture in the Korea. And I think
Sure.
that raises a question in my mind is that nowadays a lot of organizations are global organizations, right? And people are traveling from one country to another. Either they have team members in other countries or clients in countries. And so, because Steve, you work with multiverse global organizations, I think that you can answer. You're the best person to answer this question. How much a country culture impacts the culture of the company? Like it's a global company. Imagine it's a global company, and they have office in Korea also. Now I'm sure there is an impact on the Korea entity through the global country, but the company also wants to have their own culture. How much you think the impact is there, in your opinion? Do you see there's an impact, or you see no, no, no?
Oh,
If the company is great, they can.
oh, absolutely. It's tremendous impact, and it's not just, as you know, we're using Korea as an example, but every country is the same situation. All right. For example, I'll just tell you, I've been coaching some General Motors leaders. All right, it's an
Mhm.
American company, but they had bought years ago a very Korean company, Daewoo. All right,
Oh
so
yeah, yeah,
they
I know.
yeah. So they inherited a lot of traditional Korean company values. But so you have this is what you have. You first have the global headquarters corporate culture, which most of the foreigners, which are anybody that's not Korean, let's say, for example, coming to Korea, they're come here to help bring their global corporate culture to the operations. Okay. That's normal. Okay. But when they get here, what they have is they have the global corporate culture, you have the Korean country culture, and then you have the multinational company in Korea's culture. But then there's another culture. You know what that is? These individuals. I've been
Yeah,
coaching people that have been working in China, now are coming to Korea, have been in Brazil, and have never been to the United States that are in Korea now. Okay, so it sometimes gets 4 or 5 or 6 cultures all in one pot, learning how to work together. And so I described this to people. I said, you need to think of it kind of like this. It's kind of like a marriage. Okay, you know, we have things that we really enjoy about each other. We like each other. We have things in common, but there'll always be things that are different, right? Things that we see things different. I like chocolate ice cream. She likes vanilla. Okay, so what? Right? So I think what you have to do is you have to learn these different cultures. And I studied also at Harvard in one of my coaching credentials. I have 3, I think, maybe 4 actually. And one of those we talked about neuropsychology and how people think, and actually what they do is you learn how to do what's called style switching. Okay, let's say like if you have a country that's a high context culture like China and Japan and Korea versus a European or Western country which is a low context culture. And what I mean is a low context culture, it's about the facts, the words, and data. The things that we're saying, the words, facts, and data means the most. In a high context culture, it's where you're at, who's saying it, what is their title, what else is going on around. There's a lot of unvoiced, hidden conversation. Sometimes what's not said is more important than what's said. So there's all these dynamics going on that we have to pull in together. And that makes what we're talking about today even that more important, because getting the organization's core values, their culture and their values in sync so that we can work together. Because I'll never be a Korean person. I'm an American guy, right? But I have nothing against Koreans, right? But that's just the way life is. But can I love Korean people and work with them just like I do the Indian people or Americans? Sure, I can. All right. But it takes some work, it takes some effort.
Yeah, I love the way you described it, and like there is a corporate culture, then there's a country culture, and there is an individual culture. And honestly speaking, Steve, I never thought.
Well, even even in your culture, right? I mean, you're probably, just from the little that I've talked to you and gotten to know you, you're more multinational, global minded than a lot of Indians I've met. And that's probably because of who you are, what you do, and your background, your experiences. So even within your own culture, we have such a variety. Or I want to say one more thing. One of the things, because it hit me when you said that something a few minutes ago, was that, let's say you have like that person coming over here. Let's say it's an American company, just for argument's sake, and they're coming to India or Korea or Japan, wherever. Did you know that they may be a superstar doing their job in their home country, but when they come here, working in another culture, that's a whole new ball game. That's another whole new set of skills that they have to learn, and they have to be humble and admit, I don't know everything, and maybe the Indian way is the way I should consider. And I tell people, don't take your country, and because everybody has pride in their country, don't say I'm American, so that's the right way. I said, don't do that. Just say this is maybe the automotive industry's best practices, or this is the General Motors best practices way. That's okay, right? Because that's a corporate culture. That's a process, a procedure that everybody's getting behind, right? So you have to kind of work on these things to make it work.
Awesome. So to my audience, especially who are working with the global organization at this point in time and trying to work with setting up the corporate level culture, but struggling with that corporate level culture getting cascaded down to the country level culture, I think keep this advice in your mind. I think these are really, really gold. Many times we just get ourselves blinded with the corporate culture and don't think that the country level culture will make any sense. I think we have to be respectful towards that as well. Steve, you mentioned about the struggle that person might have when they come from one country to another country, and I would like to ask you how difficult it was for you to settle down in Korea. You said you are here in Korea since last 25 years, right?
Well, when I first came, I was in U.S. military, actually, and that was even longer ago. That was 30-some years ago. So, and that was when Korea was not a democracy. It was under dictatorship. So I've witnessed actually this country develop. Actually, I've been on the boards of the American Chamber of Commerce for years and been involved in lots of things. But yes, I think when I look back, I made so many mistakes because we didn't have people like you and I to talk about what we're talking about today. Yes, it existed, but it wasn't so much common knowledge. They didn't train people on cross-cultural matters or international business. They just go to that country and do whatever you're supposed to do, right? and so everybody, we made a lot of mistakes. Nowadays, when I'm coaching people, they're just blown away sometimes because, wow, I'd made a lot of mistakes. I said, yes, that's true. Like the Korean title, for example. And like in some countries in America, it doesn't matter. You can call me dishwasher. I don't care. But in Korea, people live and die by those titles. I had one major Fortune 500 client, a big one I cannot mention, came over here and started changing a bunch of job titles. And you know what happened? I was scared to death. I said, listen, suicide rate's high in Korea. People could be jumping off the bridges. Do you realize that? This is a very sensitive issue. It really is a serious issue, much more than like to Americans. And he said, well, I come from this company in America, and they said, we're going to do it the American way. I said, well, you won't. You need to adjust a little bit, or it won't work. So anyway, yeah.
No, I think that's really, really awesome. That sometimes the leaders, at least at the corporate office, sometimes does not understand the nuances of the country level. And you given a very good example of how I think it's an Asian countries thing, Steve. That even in India, the designation and titles are it means a lot. And I've seen my American colleagues, they don't give a damn about it. I'm like, well, you tell me how much money to pay to me. I don't care what designation I hold.
And we see, you know what, and like they mean it, right? But we have to tell them, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but you're not back there. You're here. right? So you have to be successful here, right? So we all have to have humility, right? And no matter where we go, and realize actually when we go to these different cultures or different countries, so those of you that have that opportunity, which I think is fantastic, I think the variety of foods, the cultures, the things is just awesome. All right. And I think to get that, and I think you also make yourself more valuable when you do that. When you can lead across a lot of opportunities like I've had, it makes you more valuable. And I think we have to go to these situations with a great deal of humility and go in and expecting that things are going to be different, because they will be. All right. And to be expecting that, and then just to go into, for example, I'll take something simple, accounting. Like a lot of accountants will say we follow the GAAP. That's the global standards. Okay, that's fine. But you come to Korea, and I think Japan, probably India too, we have like Korea GAAP. That means, yes, you follow all of that, but there's a few rules that you have to know that's a little different. Now, why are they that way? Who knows? The professionals know why they're that way, but they are that way, right? So you cannot ignore what's different. Maybe it's only 2%. Maybe it's only 5%. But whatever it is, you have to accept that, and you have to deal with it, right? But now, what can you do? Now, what can you do to help? Here's a good question I'll ask myself from you. What's a good thing you can do to help in this situation as a leader? One thing you can do is make the rules and policies and procedures to match the corporate culture that you want. What if those rules are a little bit more stricter than the local culture? Because maybe you don't want to give as much financial gifts to people, or whatever the reasons. Well, that protects your employees in that foreign country. If they're working for a multinational company, say, hey, I have to follow these rules. Okay, so you can help your people develop that culture that you're trying to establish by making rules, policies, and process and procedures, and then live it and walk the talk, right? Then it will work. Switch on is what you do in your organization.
Yeah, I think that's really, really, really awesome. That I think first, in my view, also first, just understanding that there will be cultural differences is the start point of you taking actions on that. Many a times, multinational companies do this mistake that they think that their country, and I'm talking about any country.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Korean companies that are like global companies. I think Samsung comes from Korea, is it?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So these are like big brands. There are many brands, right? So if they start, implementing the Korea culture in other part of the world, they might not be able to successful, because you correctly said they want to be successful in that country. So if you want to be successful in that country, you need to just have some flexibility based on the culture of that particular country. Awesome. I want to ask a tough question to you, Steve. I think I'm asking very easy question. I'll ask you the tough one, and I think my favorite one. This is from one of our audience, and I'm saying why it is my favorite, because Steve, when we do the cultural audits, right?
Yes.
And so you know that we are into assessing organizations and their cultures, right? So many times we get this sense, Steve, that people don't necessarily want to do these assessments or changes in the work culture they have, but they want to do these assessments and need this certification of incredible workplaces, maybe more for showing it to the world that they are certified. Now, there's nothing wrong in it that you want to showcase that you are a certified company, but I think the core of it is a problem for me, where you really don't see the value in evaluating yourself and then taking actions. And I think Neetu's question here is very, 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 like, not directly, but very close to what it is. What is the biggest gap between what leaders say about culture and what they do? And I know that you've been working with organizations on these things. So sometimes, like, do you see people like, well, they say, well, I want this thing, but the real core, when you say do this, and they're like, you feel like, okay, the actions are not matching with what the person is actually saying. What's in your experience? Do you see those gaps, or you don't see those gaps? And if so, any story that you want to share?
Well, I think as our cultures, generally speaking, become more exposed to each other, and that technology and information becomes more widely available and accessible, I think that is at pushing and forcing people to be more authentic in what they say and what they do and how they do it, because there's cameras everywhere. You know, there's everybody's a reporter. There's writing things. So I think that is forcing people to be honest about walking the talk, about doing what they say they do, and do it and make it happen. And I think this balancing the culture thing is a real issue. I mean, it's really, and you have to learn, in my opinion, you have to study and learn. I don't say you have to study the language completely. If you know a little bit, that's awesome. If you make sure you try the foods and the culture and get immersed in a little bit, that's awesome. All right, because you'll appreciate it. But there's also, you know, going to that with understanding that, well, I guess to answer your question, I think it's just, I think they have to be authentic. I think they have to really, you know, learn how to say what they mean what they say, and back it up.
And I've seen enough, Steve, where people, that's what I'm saying. My problem is actually not problem, but my observation is that sometimes they just say things in when it comes to, because implementation of those, because changing a culture, and you will agree to that, is actually a long process, right? You need investment and support from leadership, and sometimes you need to take steps that might be not financially friendly, right? So my realization is the leadership that point in time tried to take a step back, and then I feel like, well, maybe they're saying something and not necessarily meant it.
Well, you know, you may be experiencing what I know some companies, especially like in Korea, deal with like MBOs, management by objectives. You know, lots of them, they'll tell you the first question they have is, how do I score 100? And he says, well, that's important maybe, but that's not the main point. The main point is that the whole objectives of the company could change and shift. But today, and for our plans, this is what we want to do. But you have to be flexible that we may change those posts as we move along, right? So I think that may be what you're saying. Sometimes people are wanting to say the right answers, right? Instead of, or say what they think they're supposed to say, instead of saying what's the truth, so they can get the certification, which that's kind of problematic.
And Steve, before I go to the next question, I would like to call out on the comment box. I see a lot of questions coming, like it's like flooded by questions.
Really?
Audience, one thing I can tell, I can't take all of them for sure, but I think there are a lot of questions that are very connected with each other. So I'll try to ask questions that I think will answer your questions as well, or questions of multiple audience that audience wants to ask. Same time, I would like to thank Dipanshu Anand on the who is one of the active audience at this point in time. I see he's literally answering everybody's questions. So thank you, Dipanshu, for doing this. You're making the life of Steve very easy, but definitely as and when audience we get some time, I would like to have Steve's opinion also on your questions. But as I said, let me ask a question that I think most of you are trying to ask from Steve, and I think your questions will be answered there. So Steve, what practices you see from a leadership behavior perspective you found are more effective in aligning the teams with the organization's core values?
I think some of the most effective practices are actually simple. It's frequently storytelling, having an open dialogue, celebrating people who live our values in action. And I'll give an example of that in a minute. I regularly begin meetings with what's called like a value-driven moment, like sharing a real example where someone has demonstrated courage or a client obsession, or giving the space for the team members to share their own stories. And that creates ownership and connection, equally creating what we call feedback loops, such as quarterly culture reviews or informal check-ins, keeping everyone engaged and accountable. So in my opinion, when people align naturally is when leaders recognize and reward values assigned are aligned in their behavior and publicly consistently. And I coach a lot of the leaders come to Korea. I say, listen, since the Koreans it's a hierarchical culture, and they will follow the leader. I said, if you're wanting to change the way things go, like in some Korean meetings, for example, the leader does all the speaking and the other people just listen, and they don't speak up unless they're asked a question. But in the Western culture, we say, if you're invited to the team, everybody's supposed to speak up. I said, all right, so you can get them to do that if you model that behavior. And one way of modeling that behavior, let's say you have a Miss Kim there, and she came prepared, and she had a nice report, and you like it. And you tell them what I said before, exactly why you like it. You said, listen, she gave this report. It's really good. It's not too long. It's not too short. It's to the facts, and it's not diverting different ways. I like this as an example. Could we all do this as a team and model that behavior? So I think you have to. The problem is, I think, is a lot of people don't make it very clear what the culture is. What are we saying is the culture? What specifically are we talking about? What makes it? How do we know if, except for your assessment, but how do we know internally, even without that assessment first, before you do your assessment, that we're doing what we say we do, that we live what we say, right? And making that very clear. And then, but when you see it happen, point it out. She did it. She did a great job. And if someone doesn't do right, don't kill them over it. Just say, hey, okay, we learned from this, right? That's not maybe the thing we want. Let's try it a little differently, and then change.
Yeah, and I think you're raising and reinforcing one of the important points is that culture should not only be a piece of paper that you want to put in your, somewhere, laminate it and put it on the wall, but something that you exercise on day-to-day basis. And what you're saying, Steve, is exercise it by way of behaviors, by way of calling out those behaviors, rewarding those behaviors, and maybe just saying, hey, now let's learn from it and move forward. I think that's really, really a key point. And I do agree with your point. There are multiple ways, Steve, that one can definitely, assess the culture of the organization, even before our assessment. And there are those small things that you can just notice, whether that is there in the place or not. So thank you very much. And I'm sure there are a lot of questions that are there in the comment box, which are around that itself has been answered. So again, my promise to the audience, I'll come back to the questions once I ask. I think that the majority of the things that you are wanted to ask, and see whatever is left, I'll try to pick that up. Now, Steve, I'm moving on to another question that we have, right? How do you ensure that culture is not just defined from top, but lived across all the levels of the organization? And this is a big challenge, Steve, because sometimes let's say you as a CEO of the company wants to have a culture, but at the end of the day, it's not only what you want, but how is basically lived by every individual. I think you kind of gave some hints, but I'm still asking you how it should be done that everybody living it in the organization.
You're right. I agree 100%. My thoughts are that culture is co-owned. Okay, culture is co-owned. It works only if each person feels empowered to shape how things are done. All right. So my approach. So think about it. If it's only like from a dictator, and I'm the leader and I'm the head guy, and I'm just telling you what to do, that's not as effective as if we create it together. Okay. So my approach is what I call proactive agility. They can see a small clip of me doing this sometime. Maybe I'll give you a link to it. But equipping every team with both. I'm speaking in Chicago, talking about this actually. Equipping every team with both the clarity of values and the freedom to make decisions aligned with those values. This means training frontline managers to recognize and model the desired behaviors, giving teams opportunities to redefine rituals or workflows. I keep changing my corporate culture, just so you know, evolving it, okay? I run regular culture clinics, okay, where employees can share what's working and what's missing, all right? So leadership listens, they acts, and then we close the loop, all right? In proactive agility, it's a leadership framework that I've created, I speak about. It's helping leaders and organizations thrive amid rapid change, okay, and uncertainty, by anticipating opportunities, acting early, and fostering a forward-thinking culture, which I think all of us need to have. I think the world is moving faster than ever before. And so many of us are just waiting for the world to change around us and then act. That's reacting instead of being proactive. So the core principles are anticipate, okay? We leaders have to proactively scan the environment for emerging trends and risk before they become urgent. And then empower, empowering the teams to be trusted and to own the future, and trust the teams to own it. I talk about Zara, and we don't have time to talk about it today, but what a great example they are of doing this. Learning and adaptation. That means you also have to have a learning culture, okay? Of perpetual learning. In other words, in your organization, have it where we're always learning and growing and adapting, okay? And then visible leadership action. Leaders model this mindset, okay? By making values and adaptive behaviors every day in everything they do. So by setting that out and doing it, we can learn set behaviors. And the critical thing I think about this, if I have a minute, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to answer, if I have a chance, to say the question is like, okay, so what? What if I do that? What am I going to get out of it? If you follow my framework, okay? And this is what I want to share, because if this is, what are the key metrics for proactive agility? So I wrote this down, so I have to read this over here, so excuse me. Time to market. When you have a proactive agility process, it measures how quickly new ideas, products, or solutions move from concept to launch. A shorter time indicates proactive detection and acting on opportunities. You know what Adidas did? Even last year, before all these talks about trade and tariffs and all this, they decided, you know, we do a lot of R&D, which is true for years, a lot of R&D and production in China. So you know what they did? They changed their whole process model of where you design, develop in one country, then it goes all over the world, like I described. They said, we're going to design and develop some product in China for China. There's no duties. There's no freight. There's no politics. China products for China consumers. Brilliant. Global. It's called a new word called globalization, global and local, globalization. So they changed it. Zara and works always on their supply chain. They're changing. They're always looking, how can it be better? How can it be faster? And they're faster than other companies because they're active. They're proactively agile, adaptable. This is, I think, job security for employees, for the companies, for your brand to do these things. Because I think things are changing so fast. If you don't follow this, you're going to be left behind. All right. Did you know one thing I talked about in my keynote speech is that of the Fortune 500 companies, did you know the tenure on the Fortune 500 companies used to be 58 years is how long a company would stay on that. Now it's less than 18 years. Wow. So when I say things are moving faster than ever before, I can prove it. Spotify has like 1.2 million data points every second. Okay, so it's really true. So we have to learn to be proactively agile, adjust our culture to think this way, constantly learning, listen to our team, own the future, and plan for it, and to get ahead of the curve. That's called job safety. That's called job security. It's building a corporate culture. It's being competitiveness for your product, your service. I think it's awesome. I think we all need to consider that. Because if you just step back and wait for things to change, if I did that when I was at Adidas, it wouldn't be as big as companies it is now. I couldn't do that. I was maybe 3 seasons ahead of the customer. Seriously, 3 seasons. You know, I can't wait for the customer in that case. I would lose. So you had to get ahead of the curve. That's my point.
Wow, that's really amazing, because I also think that the important point here is that, and I used to say the same, like the world is changing so fast that once you get settled with one change, the other change is coming up, right? Whether it's the technology, political changes, geopolitical changes coming up, because there are benefits of being global organization and there are disadvantages of being global organizations, because then you have also dependencies on other. And I see a lot of pressure on the organization nowadays from geopolitical decisions that other governments take, and it impacts you or your country. So that's really happening a lot. And then this is technology advancements going on, right? Today you prepare for one, and then suddenly tomorrow something new is coming up, and you don't even know how do you prepare yourself for that. And in this world,
Yes.
having a culture where you are able to put your products quicker to the market is really a great advantage to the organization, I would say.
Yeah.
Awesome, Steve. We are up the time. What a lovely conversation. And I think I perceived in the beginning that we won't be able to take all the questions because I thought that we will have more questions that we could definitely potentially have time to answer. And I could see on the chat box is flooded with the questions. So the thing I can, or one favor I can ask you, Steve, if you are okay, I'll share you the link, and you will already have it because you are tagged on the live that we are having right now. If you can go to those questions that people have asked, I believe that majority of them we try to answer through the questions that I ask you. But if still there are questions that we did not touch upon, would you be okay whenever you get some time to just go and answer those questions for our audience?
Okay, sure. I'll do my best.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being here on our episode 16, Steve. It was really, really pleasure. Because I think I think your profile is really perfect because in the beginning I did not realize that you come from US and living in Korea. I thought you're from Korea. I think you're a great candidate for this conversation. Why? Because you're a real example of multicultural, right? Coming from US and being in Korea for 25 is a great resilience that you need to build into yourself. So it's not that what you coach other, you have lived through that journey yourself, and now you're coaching. So I think a great candidate for us at least to have this conversation. And I'm sure our audience might have learned a lot from the advices that you have given and the consulting that you used to give to your clients and you shared with us. And I'm sure that there are something there for our audience to learn from it. Before I close this conversation, anything, Steve, that you want to say to our audience before we close this episode?
No, I think continue to follow people, read, study, continually studying to stay up to date on things that are changing around the world and great thought leaders, because I do that as well. And I'm always growing, right?
Awesome.
So I'm young at heart. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. And thank you. This one is Steve McKinney with us, the CEO of McKinney Consulting Inc. from Korea. And what a great conversation on culture, and what a great speaker on this, because he comes from diverse culture himself. So he's coaching people on what he lived through. So really appreciate. We will be watching you. I will be meeting you in the next episode in alternate Thursday with another global leader which we have. But before we close this, thank you very much, Steve, once again for being on our show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a nice day. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Okay.